Next, we're going to hear from another one of our peers, Mr. Joseph Carpenter, who will talk about personal, not professional, but personal development through project-based learning. He is a CTE teacher from California Academy of Math and Science in Long Beach Unified School District. Please help me welcome Mr. Joseph Carpenter. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing your passion for teaching with me today. My name is Joe Carpenter, and again, I'm the capstone engineering teacher at the California Academy of Math and Science, which is located on the Dominguez Hills campus in Carson. And I'm here to talk to you about something today that's dear to my heart, and that is personally developing your students through project-based work. I feel privileged to come up here and talk to you today, and a little intimidated, because I never really considered myself a teacher. I'm an industry person. I got hijacked by this school in 1992 to come try and teach a CAD class, and at the time, they didn't have any curriculum, they didn't have any software, so they basically just told me, do what you do at work. I agreed to try it first semester, and then I just never left. So I feel like I'm only a teacher because my students call me this. But I've learned a lot of things over the years, and things I hope to share with you today. So it was my full-time job that actually gave me the context to teach my class with. I worked both jobs for 21 years, full-time at TRW and then Northrop Grumman bought them. And then I worked part-time at CAMS on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I time-shifted my time, snuck out at lunch, and just, put meeting on my whiteboard at Northrop. And every time we had a regime change at Northrop, I just never re-asked my boss if I could do this. I just kept doing it. So I got away with it a little bit. So I thought that by incorporating industry practices and setting them in the context of real-world scenarios, I could give my students not only knowledge, but I could give them a practical knowledge. I could give them marketable skills. My principal fully empowered me, and actually that taught me a lot about how to run my class and how to deal with my students. My first goal was to give them, again, a marketable skill, so I taught them how to do technical drawings to industry standards. We learned to use the CAD tool. We learned to make them to the industry standards in the fall. In the spring, we would do small design projects using our CAD skills. Teaching somebody how to use CAD is kind of like teaching them how to use a hammer. If you're not going to build anything with a hammer, what good was the knowledge? So we started doing small design projects. Once I figured out how much I could cram into a teenage skull, the projects got more and more ambitious. So at that time, I was only teaching seniors, and in that class, what I did is I divided the seniors up into two teams. I have to come over here and grab this thing because I forgot to take it with me. I divide them into two teams. I have them form corporate identities. The students interview for job positions. We have management positions. We have the project managers, deputy project managers, chief scientists. We have systems engineers, mechanical engineers. Everybody has a job. And then those teams run their own companies to complete their project mission. They are fully empowered to make any decisions that they want to make in getting their project done. I represent a fictitious government agency. I don't know how many of you are familiar with DARPA, but DARPA is the innovation engine of the defense industry. DARPA is responsible for the internet. DARPA is responsible for the autonomous cars that Google is using to drive around the country. They have just crazy projects. So I changed the D to a C for CAMS, and I have the CARPA initiative. And so I give them a design brief, crazy project. The students are responsible from cradle to grave to provide me with the mission parameters. I inherited, or it was fortunate for me because they moved my job to Huntsville. And so the day that they told us they were going to lay our whole department off, I went into the school and the principal called me into her office and said, you know, the introductory engineering teacher is leaving for another school. Do you want her job? So, okay, I'll think about it. So I ended up becoming full-time there, and I had the freshman class as well. So the freshman class, basically I teach them design process, but I teach that class in a context where we're a design firm, and we get contracted to innovate or create or design new products. So in between doing the lessons that I need them to know about doing CAD work and stuff like that, every project that we do is based in some way off this idea that we are a design firm and we're contracted to do this work. The projects in these classes can be simple or complex, but the projects themselves really are just a medium to paint in. The goal for the class for me is the personal development of these students. And then sometimes I'm putting them into the fire by having them manage other students. The senior class is 20 students per team. It's a big group. And so they have to learn how to work with people, manage their projects. The freshman class, we work in groups of 6. So as I developed these classes, I had 3 premises that I kind of based my curriculum in. And the first one is that failure is a virtue. To an engineer, failure is a data collection tool to better understand why something doesn't work. And engineers will keep collecting data, keep refining their designs, keep testing, and they'll keep doing that until they get the desired outcome. Unfortunately, many of our students have been convinced or were raised or just they believe that failure is defeat. They believe that failure is a lack of success. And so as educators, we must recondition our students to let them see that there is no failure, there's only feedback, and that there is value in failure and in its power of innovation. So I had a student who was born with an underdeveloped hand on one side. It was more of a ball than a hand. And he came to me when I met him in the freshman class. He came to me, his hand was always in his pocket. So we're doing a sketching exercise in the beginning of the freshman class, and Chris is trying to draw a water bottle on his desk. And Chris is getting frustrated. So he wads up his paper, comes over to my desk, throws it on my desk. He says, "Carpenter, I can't do this." And at that moment, I got the perception that Chris's physical challenges were basically an excuse for non-performance. So I took the paper and I smoothed it out on my desk, and I handed it back to him and said, "Gee, I'm sorry, Chris, but I don't take excuses. I don't see why you can't perform this assignment correctly and on time." He storms back to his desk, sits down. A few minutes later, I go over, sit down next to him, and I said, "You know, your whole problem in trying to draw this or sketch this is the fact that you're trying to do it with the left side of your brain." "Huh?" I go, "The left side of your brain sees this as a water bottle and it interprets it as a water bottle, so you're trying to draw your interpretation of a water bottle. I suggest you flip the bottle upside down and draw it with the right side of your brain, which offers no such interpretation. You'll just draw what you see." Any of you remember Disney's movie Dumbo? And remember Timothy the Mouse? Gives Dumbo the magic feather so he can fly? There's absolutely no scientific evidence supporting the left brain, right brain thing. It's a myth that was started in the 1960s. But to Chris, it removed, by giving him, I wanted Chris to understand that this did not define him. This defined him. And with enough of this and a lot of this, wasn't anything he couldn't do if he set his mind to it. I gave Chris a magic feather. I lied to him. In doing so, I removed the stress of failure for Chris, and it allowed him to work to his potential. I got a much improved sketch back from him, and he began to trust me. So as we went on with our further assignments, I gave him little tips of how he could work, because we do a lot of manual drafting before I actually turn on the CAD system. So I gave him some tips on how to do his assignments. Chris ultimately went on to join the robotics team. He became an accomplished machinist, ultimately became the captain of the robotics team, and in doing so, he ended up being an inspiration to some of the other members of that team. 2 feet is behind. So it wasn't easy for Chris, but Chris is an example that there is growth and struggle. There's no better teacher than experience, and experience comes from failure. Not only do we learn from our own mistakes, but we can learn from the mistakes of others. Failure is timeless. Success is fleeting. If your students see failure as a defeat rather than as a lesson, then they are denied an opportunity to create something new. Failure inspires change, and without change, there can be no innovation. Failure is a virtue. Secondly, and Kimberly talked about this earlier today, a great ed talk. Didn't she do a great job? It was awesome. Communication is the key to collaboration. How many of you have your students work in groups? We're supposed to do that now, right? It's common practice to have them learn to collaborate. How many times do your students in those groups feel like they're the ones doing all the work? Somebody else is not participating. I believe that much of this comes from a lack of communication within that group. How many of you have ever seen that shy student circling around a discussion group, looking to see if it's safe to enter? How many of you know an autistic person? They tend to communicate in a very literal way. Have you ever talked to someone and felt that they were abrupt with you? Or that they just rambling on and on and on, never getting to their point? And you feel frustrated trying to communicate with them? We all have a preferred way of communicating, and we don't always understand how to effectively communicate with others. For this reason, in my classes, I've introduced personality profiling in my classroom to help develop communication and interpersonal skills. I use a free system online that distinguishes between 4 distinct personality types: the athletic dominant type personality, the emotional personality, the steadfast personality, and the analytical personality. All 4 of these types have different reward systems, and they communicate in very different ways. The emotional type of person seeks connections, where the analytical type person seeks data. The athletic person, the dominant person, they seek power. And the steadfast person seeks order. If they're all working in a group, they may never get on the same page if they don't know how to talk to each other. I could say to, say, an analytical type person, the work you turned in here it's not right. They're going to say, what's wrong with it? Well, this section right here needs some work. Prove it. Where's the data? They want to read all the manuals before they actually do anything. The dominant type personality might say, what's wrong with that? And you could say, looks like you did this in the last 15 minutes. Is this an example of your best work? They'll give it back to you because they can't stand to have something not be perfect because they're goal-oriented people. But what would happen if I talked to an emotional person that way? They'd take it personally, wouldn't they? They might cry. I'm bad. I did a bad thing. You can't talk to an emotional person that way. You might have to go up and say, this is really great what you've done, but we have to edit this part. This part needs a little bit of work. And unfortunately, I need it right away. Would you mind staying a little late and reworking this a little bit so I can have it for the meeting tomorrow? Oh, sure, no problem, because I'm making a personal connection. They see that connection with me. They want to perform for you. They want to help you. So you have to, or I feel, at least with my students, to collaborate effectively, they need to recognize each other's personality types and learn how to talk to them. So in my senior class, and I realize a lot of you teach elementary school and middle school, But in the senior level class, and when they form their corporations and they form their corporate identities, they'll make badges. And so on the corner of that badge, they'll put their personality profile type. So I can look and I can see that, Kim might be a D-type personality, I might be an I. I know if she talks to me a certain way, I'm not going to take it personally, but I'm going to understand where she's coming from. And so by having discussion groups after they learn these types, they learn how to communicate better with each other. The third thing, you're telling me to wrap this up, but third thing is their vision, not your vision. As educators, we frequently measure student performance based on tests and rubrics. We disseminate information, we assess the assimilation of that knowledge through testing. I hate rubrics. I hate testing. That's our vision. We do that because it's easier to grade them. But is that really knowledge? If you provide a rubric to a student, what they will do is they'll look at the rubric and they'll do what they have to do to get the grade that they want. That's not the best that they have to offer. That's what they had to do to get by. There are no rubrics in life. Your boss is not going to give you a rubric. He's not going to measure he or she's not going to measure your performance based on test scores or rubric adherence. They're going to base your performance on if you're a risk taker, how you applied your knowledge. So that's what I seek to do in class. If you make your grading more subjective, if nothing else, out of fear, you'll more often get them to perform to the best of their capabilities. Ever been to a science fair? Does that look familiar? Rows and rows of tables, each with a trifold cardboard poster, candy dish, a brochure, and a mock-up of the design concept. This is a teacher's vision. I do have rubrics, but I only give them to them the day the assignment's done. I don't give them to them while they're doing the thing. Your vision or their vision? I don't give my students expectations. I wait to see what they'll come up with. So this is three photographs from the showcase event at the end of the year for our senior project. I just tell them that they have to showcase their project in a trade show-like environment. That's what I got. 3 separate years. I don't tell them how to showcase it. That's all up to them. Some other examples, because I have to rush. So other examples of student vision is our outreach program. And again, this is my senior class. But the senior class decided that they wanted to form their own outreach team. They wanted to go to elementary and middle schools and help inspire those students to consider STEM-related careers. So they go with games. One of the popular things that they did is they created a passport, and they had STEM booths within the classroom, one for science, one for technology, one for engineering, one for math, and the students had to do little activities at each one of those, and every time they went there, they got their passport stamped. When they got to the end, they were asked a question based on one of those places they visited, and if they got the answer right, they got a little bag of candy. They did this because they wanted to give back to the community. There was no grade for this. Part of their vision, part of their legacy for the class, we made outreach a permanent part of that class. Still for no grade, because outreach is a gift. The last thing that I want to talk about these students did, they did an internship for the underclassmen. Because the senior level class is kind of it's developed a reputation on the campus. They developed an internship program for the underclassmen so that they could help groom those students for the capstone experience. But more importantly, they developed it for some of the students that needed something in their lives to help build their self-esteem. They're allowed to have 10 interns per team. Here they're doing like a speed dating type of thing to interview the prospective interns because they had something like 70 applicants. And they ended up taking 34. Some of the 34 they took because they might have been special needs students. They might have been loners on campus. They wanted to give them something that they could believe in to help them build their self-esteem. This is their vision. Leave your students to their own devices and creativity, and they will outperform your expectations. Provide an opportunity, give them purpose, and empower them. Knowledge without purpose is trivia. Knowledge with purpose is empowering. Give them a reason to retain their knowledge. Project-based learning as a developmental tool empowers students to perform to their hidden potential. Using these methods, your students will learn more about themselves than you could ever teach them in a traditional setting. Projects can be scaled up or down to the appropriate grade level, but always remember to make them reach a little farther than you think you're capable of. They will surprise you. You'll get a variety of results with these methods, but you'll also give your students a sense of what they can accomplish, truly accomplish in their lives. They will learn to trust in their own abilities, and they will learn that with a little bit of this and a lot of this, there's nothing they can't accomplish. Thank you.